Hello and welcome, I'm Dave. Today we'll begin working on our client-side forms with React Hook Form, and we'll support type safety and validation by generating Zod schemas and types. I'll provide a link to all resources in the description. And I'll also provide a link to join my Discord server where you can discuss this Nextjs Full Stack project with fellow students, ask questions, and help each other out. Hey guys, a big shout out and thank you to Sentry for making this full stack Next.js educational video series possible. Sentry is defining debuggability in full stack web applications, and I consider Sentry to be an essential part of my tech stack. From error reporting, logging, and tracking to identifying performance issues with tracing, to user session replays, and much more, Sentry will help you write and ship code that delivers exceptional user experiences. Follow the Sentry links in the video description or just visit Sentry.io and use the code davegray to get 3 months of the Sentry team plan for free. In this Next.js Full Stack Project series, I'm using the same tech stack that I've been working with on a major project at my job over the past year. For viewers, students, and subscribers that have asked what I work with on a daily basis, this is definitely the tutorial series to watch. I've got VS Code open and I've got our user stories markdown file open, and as with every lesson we start out looking at the user stories list. So we're working towards completing some user stories, but for the first time since we started this project we didn't complete any in the last video, so no items to check off today. However, we're working towards number 14 here, all users can create and view tickets, and number 15, all users can create, edit, and view customers. So those two in particular. After that, once we get involved with some permissions, we'll also have employees can only edit their assigned tickets, and managers and admins can view, edit, and delete all tickets. So we're working towards these with our forms. We're going to need to install some dependencies today, so I'm going to press Control and the backtick, and we'll start installing. So I'll use npm I, and I want to install Zod, and then I also want a package called Drizzle-Zod that we'll be using, and then React-Hook-Form, and another one with the @ symbol first, and then hookform/resolvers. And once again, because I'm using Next.js 15 but still React 19 release candidate, I'm going to have to use the legacy peer deps flag. If you're watching this in the future, you may not need to do that if the packages have caught up and React 19 is released in a stable version as well. So I'm using the legacy peer deps flag, and all should be good for these installs. Let's go ahead and press enter. It should add these dependencies to our project, and we'll be able to see them in the package JSON file. So let's take a quick look at that. Here's our package JSON. You can see we've got the @hookform resolvers, and then we should also have Drizzle-Zod right here, React Hook Form here, and finally Zod at the bottom. So these are alphabetical. Now there's one more dependency to add, but I wanted to do it separately because it was recently announced that it already supports Next.js 15 and React 19 release candidate, and that is a ShadCN component. Earlier in this series, when I was installing ShadCN components, I had to use that legacy peer deps flag, but now it's built into the installer. So we'll check that out with shad, spell that correctly, ShadCN at latest, and then I want to say add form, and we'll go ahead and press enter, and it may ask us some questions, and we'll say yes, it's okay to proceed. And it's checking the registry, and here it asks us if we want to use the force flag or the legacy peer deps flag. And so we'll say use legacy peer deps. It should go ahead and complete the install now. Oh, and it's asking about the button because we already had the button installed. What do I want to overwrite? I can say no or yes, either one. I'll just say no for now. And we're fine. So it just skipped the button right here that would normally install with form because we already had it, but it did install label, notice that, as well as form. Okay, let's close the terminal window now, and I'm going to create a new directory inside the source directory. So I'll scroll up to the source directory and highlight that, create a new directory inside of it, and you could call it schemas. I don't want it to be confused with the schema we already created for Drizzle though, so I'm going to call this directory Zod-schemas, and this is where we will create our Zod schemas. So inside of this one, I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call this customer.ts. Let's type import, and then we'll have create insert schema, and we also need the select schema. So I'll go back and put a comma, and then I want create select schema, and both of these are going to come from Drizzle-Zod. I'll press Alt-Z to wrap this down, but for now I'm also going to press Control-B and just hide the file tree so we get just a little more room here. Okay, after that, on the next line, I'm going to import customers, which is our customers table, so it comes from the DB schema. Okay, after that, let's go ahead and modify the insert schema. Well, we'll create it, but we'll also modify it. So we'll say export const insert customer schema. And now we'll set this equal to create insert schema. And here, the first thing we do is pass in the customers table. Now after this, this is where we can actually modify. Oh, I didn't put the T in insert. Okay, but this is where we can modify what we expect, because we could just stop right here without passing anything in as a second param. This would instantly create the schema based on the table. That's how Drizzle-Zod helps us out. But we do want to put in some validation for our schema, so it will check a few things for us and provide accurate error messages as well. So I'm going to type these out here. We'll have first name, and now it receives the schema in a function, and now we'll say schema.firstname.min, and this is where we can use Zod. So we're saying the minimum, and we'll just say is 1 character, and then we'll say first name is required. And that is how you can use Zod. So if you've used Zod before, you may be used to typing z dot something, and there will be a time in the ticket schema where I will do that as well. But Drizzle-Zod allows you to reference the schema that's passed in and use Zod in this way. So this is what we're going to do for the most part. Now last name is going to be pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to copy this, paste it down here, and I'm just going to change first to last. Control D to get the next one. Type last. So last name is required. After that, address 1. So again, we'll have the schema. And address 1 is also required. So let me just paste that in again and say address 1. And then for our, oh, we've got in 2 schemas. That's why we have the red. I pasted the whole thing after typing some. Okay, then for the message here, we'll just say address is required. But then on the next line, we're not going to require like address 2, so we don't really need to do anything. It's already part of the schema here, so I don't have to list every field because we've passed in the table already. So address 2 is already part of the whole type here that we'll have. So I'm only listing the fields that I'm actually putting in some validation for. So after this, I'm going to say city, and we'll also say city is required. So let me just copy this one. I can switch this to city. Say city is required. And state is going to be just a little different. So let's go ahead and type that one. Our schema again. And it's a function, then schema.state dot. And now we'll put in a length, because this is specifically going to be a length of 2, because we're using United States state abbreviations or territories, either one, and we'll have a list of those. So we'll say state must be exactly 2 characters, will be the validation message. Okay, email. We can check specifically for an email with Zod. So we'll say schema equals, and here we'll have schema.email, and then we actually call email. We can have a message here, so we'll just say invalid email address if it does not validate as an email. Oh, and let's add a minimum too. So besides checking that, we could say email is required, so we don't have something that's empty. But, you know, we may not need to do that because it would be invalid if it was empty as well. So let's try it without. Let's try it without. Okay. Next field would be zip. And here we'll pass the schema once again. Now I'm going to use a regex on zip. Now this is where AI comes in handy for writing regexes. But I've also written regexes over the years and kind of saved a few too. So here we go with a slash. Now this, well, here we go. Where's the arrow? There it is. So that indicates the beginning. And then we have a lowercase d saying digits. And we expect a 5-digit zip. But then optionally, we could also have a hyphen, then a slash D for digits again, and 4 more because US digits can also be 5 digits, and then a dash and 4 digits. And then we'll put the question mark here, and the dollar sign indicates end. And then we need another slash. There we go. So there's the regex. Put a comma there. And then we need to put our validation message after that. So we'll say invalid zip code, use 5 digits or 5 digits followed by a hyphen and 4 digits. Could be a long validation message. We'll try that out and see if we like how that looks when that validation message pops up. Okay, after that, phone. And we can also use regex to check a phone number if we want to. So here we'll say schema.phone.regex. Okay, this will start with that slash once again. And now we'll say the beginning with our little caret and then slash D. Now we want 3 characters. Then we want a hyphen. Then we want 3 more characters. And then we want a hyphen. And then we want 4 characters. Again, these should all be digits, so that's why we have the D or the slash D before. Then a question mark and a dollar sign, and then the slash. And that indicates it's a regex. And now we'll say invalid. Oh, you know what? I put a question mark in there that I didn't need. Okay, so 4 digits and then the dollar sign. That indicates the end. Invalid, after that, phone number format, and let's say use xxx dash dash, there it is, xxx dash xxxx. And that should work for our validation message there. And that's the last field that we're going to validate in the address. There are a few other fields in the table as well, but we don't need to list any of those. Okay, now at the bottom of this, we'll say export const select customer schema. Remember, this is the insert one up here. The select one, we're just selecting data from the table. So here we'll say create select schema, and we'll just pass in customers, and that's all we need. We don't need to modify anything. Now let's get the types of both of these schemas. So we can say export type, insert customer schema, and let's just call it insert customer schema type. Set that equal to type of insert customer schema dot, and then you want underscore type. Now that's referencing the type from the Zod schema. So we still need type of here as well. Okay, after that, say export type, and we want select customer schema type. We'll set this equal to type of, and then we'll say select customer schema dot underscore type. And we've got the type for the select customer schema. And now that we've completed the customer types here, let's go ahead and do the same for ticket. Now, ticket isn't nearly as long, but we need to create a new file. So we'll say ticket.ts. Now at the top here, we will import both create insert schema, and we also need create select schema. And I'll press Alt-Z once again to wrap that down. After we got that from Drizzle-Zod, we'll import the tickets table. And finally, we're going to need to import Z, and this is going to come from Zod. Okay, now we'll say export const insert ticket schema, set this equal to create insert schema. And here we'll pass in the tickets table. And now just a few fields. And the first one is ID. Now here we're going to have kind of a unique situation because the ID field in the table only selects numbers, and that's fine. But we're going to need something to indicate in this field that we have a new ticket as well, and we want to show it possibly in the form. And if that's the case, we need this to accept possibly a number and a string, at least in the form. So here we'll say z.union. Now we'll have brackets in here and we'll say z.number, so that would cover the typical ID number. Then also z.literal, and we'll specify, so we won't just say any strings, okay, it has to be this string. And this would say new inside of parentheses. So that's what we would show in the field instead of a ticket number if we wanted to show it. But if not, even if we weren't showing it, we could look for this value when we submit it, and then we know, hey, we've got a new ticket as well. Okay, after that, we'll say the title for the ticket. Now we'll go back to how we were working with Drizzle-Zod before and pass in the schema. And we'll say schema.title.min. We need at least one character, and then we'll say title is required. Then description. And then we'll pass in the schema once again. Here we'll say schema.description.min. And I believe it's the same thing. Yep, one, and then description is required. And finally, we'll say tech here. And this is a schema. And this is going to be an email. If you remember previously when we went to the Neon console, we changed the tech field values from unassigned, as if they were new tickets that hadn't been assigned yet, and we switched them to like new-ticket@example.com. So here I'm just going to say schema.tech.email because it could be the tech's email or it could be that example one. So we'll just validate for an email address and then say invalid email address. And that's all we need to do. Yes, there's other fields in the ticket table, but these are the only ones that we need to validate and work with in our form. So that's what we'll go with here for the insert ticket schema. Then we'll go ahead and create a select one as well. So export const select ticket schema. Set this equal to create select schema and pass in tickets. That's all we need to do there. Now let's get the types. So export type, insert ticket schema type equals type of insert ticket schema dot underscore type, and export type select ticket schema, we'll call that type as well, equals type of, then select ticket schema dot underscore type. And we have completed schemas and the types here for ticket as well. Okay, we're in the ShadCN UI docs, and I'm on the form page, and it immediately talks about React Hook Form and building forms with React Hook Form and Zod. Now, this being a Next.js 15 project, you may have thought I was going to use the new Next form, but really I like this setup, and this is what I've been working with, and that's what this project series is about, is actually what I have been working with over the past year. And I like using React Hook Form and Zod. Now, I've looked a little bit at the new Next.js Next/form that you can import. It's an okay form, but it really doesn't offer everything this combination does yet. And maybe they'll continue to add things to it, but React Hook Form works on the client side. So you get this client validation, and then of course, and server side validation when we use server actions. So it has both. And Shad lists some things here that we also want in a form: well-structured, semantically correct, easy to use and navigate, even with a keyboard, accessible with ARIA attributes and proper labels, well-styled and consistent. Now, all of those things you get with ShadCN anyway, but what really stands out to me with React Hook Form and Zod is you get that type safety in the client and the server, and you get the validation, importantly, in both the client side and on the server side. And that validation is instantly so the users see it. It provides that instant feedback, and I think that's so important. So that's why we're going with React Hook Form in this project. Okay, we're back in VS Code. Let's scroll back up to where we had our form segment for customers. So here we're inside of app, then the RS directory, then customers, form. And here's the page where we get our information we worked on in the last tutorial, bringing in that data here. And our server component that I said was the data layer. It's actually requesting the data. Then we're doing anything we want to with the data before we pass it down to our client component where the form is going to be. So I'm going to create the client component right here in this directory also, and that's called co-location of files. I'm doing that because it's not going to be for reuse anywhere else. It's going to be just for this area. So I don't want to put it down in the components directory where I might have other components that I would reuse in other places, like that back button. So here I'm going to create this new component and name it customer form.tsx. Now, immediately, this needs to be a client component. So I'll use the use client directory. Then I want to import use form, and that's going to come from react-hook-form. After that, I want to import a Zod resolver that I'll use with the form. That's going to come from @hookform/resolvers. Oh, got a space in there I didn't want. Okay, then it's got an error here. I need Zod at the end. So it wanted to autocomplete, but it didn't think about putting Zod right there at the end. There we go. Okay, after that, I also need to import form. I can spell form. There we go, that we imported from ShadCN. So that comes from @components UI/form. Okay, after that, we'll import button. That's also going to come from ShadCN. So @/components/UI/button. Okay, now we're going to import the schema and types that we need. So we'll import our insert customer schema. We'll also put in the keyword type here and then say insert customer schema type, and one more type, and then select customer schema type. Alt-Z to wrap all of that down to stay on the screen. And now we can start our function, and we need props, of course. So we'll say type props equals, what will be passed in, at least possibly, is a customer. If we're going to edit a customer, we'll get that customer data, and it would be from the select customer schema type. So there are the props. So now we can start the actual function with export default function customer form, and it's going to possibly receive that customer data, the props. And now inside the function, the first thing we're going to do is define the default values for the form. So I'm going to say const default values, and we'll set the type here as the insert customer schema type. So this is what the form will hold as the data. And of course, that data is what we will eventually want to insert back into our database table. Let's start with ID, and that will be customer. And of course, we're going to have to check all of these with optional chaining because we may not actually get customer data. So if we don't have customer data, we need to give it a fallback value. And I'll do that with a short circuit, 2 pipes, and I'll just put a 0 for the ID if we don't have a customer, because that is a number type. Then we'll use first name, and this will be similar. So we'd say customer, optional chaining, first name. And if we don't have a first name, we're going to use the short circuit again, and then we'll just have an empty string. As you might guess, we'll do the same for last name. So customer, optional, last name, short circuit, empty string. And then we'll do address 1. And we'll do address 2 after this. So customer, address 1. If you're using AI, like an AI code assistant, it will probably figure this out and fill it in for you a lot faster than what I'm doing right now. I don't like to use that during a coding tutorial, but sometimes I do use it when I am coding, and it does make me faster. Okay, after address 2, we want city, and that's also going to follow the same pattern. And then possibly state. Yep, that would be customer optional chaining state, empty string, and then we'll have zip. And then we'll have our phone. And let's also have an email. And essentially what we're saying here, our empty fields are okay in our form as well. And of course the 0 at the top means it hasn't been assigned yet, as the customer ID isn't something that we fill out ourselves. Okay, so those are all of the default values. So basically an empty form, or if we get customer data, then we use the customer data here. Okay, after the default values, we need to set up the form. So we'll say const form, set that equal to use form, and now we set a type here, and this would be our insert customer schema type. And now we'll put parentheses and start an object. And in this object for options, we'll say the mode is on blur. And that means the user will see the validation for the field, like an error message, as soon as they tab out of the field if they have entered incorrect data. Then we'll set the resolver. And this is the Zod resolver. We'll pass in our insert customer schema. And then we'll pass in the default values. And we don't need to say default values colon default values. We can just say default values, comma, and it will read those in as the default values. Okay, let's scroll for a little bit of room. And now let's create our onSubmit function. And for now, we're just going to console log the values when we submit the form. But we'll say async function, submit form, and it receives data. Let's just call the param data, and that data is going to be insert, spell insert right there. I can just press tab and have it autocomplete. Okay, so async function submit form receives data that is the insert customer schema type. And then we'll just say console log data for now. Okay, now we're not going to enter in the complete form now, but we'll get it started. So I need the return here for our JSX. We'll have a div. I'll go ahead and put the class names on the parent divs at least. So here it's going to be flex and flex column, and we'll give it a gap of 1. And let's say when we get to a larger screen, the small size as indicated by the breakpoint here in Tailwind with the SM colon, then we'll give padding on the left and right. Let me say -8 for that. Okay, we've got our parent div. Now inside, we'll start another div here. And inside this div, let's put in an H2 that will have a title. So here I'll have class name. I'm going to set that equal to text-2XL font-bold. And now let's decide what goes here. I'm going to press Control B again to hide the file tree, just so we have a little more room. And then I'm going to check to see if I have a customer ID value. So optional chaining once again. Now remember, we put in 0 if we didn't have a customer ID. So that would evaluate to false. So this would be only if we had an actual customer ID. I'll use a ternary statement. And if we do have a customer ID, we're going to put the word edit in the title. And if we don't, we're going to put the word new in the title. And after that, I can say customer form. So we either have edit customer form or new customer form. Okay, then after this div, we'll start the form with that form component that we imported in from ShadCN. And here's where we spread in the form from React hook form. Okay, then we have the closing form tag from that same component. Now we actually put an HTML form inside of this, and React hook form works with that. And this is also documented on the ShadCN site if you want to see some other examples of how this works. But I'll show you how it works here as well. So put in our form element, which is your typical HTML form element. Now we'll have an onSubmit handler. So we'll set this equal, and we'll have our form dot handle submit. This is called from React Hook form, and we pass in that submit form function we created above. So if we look back up here, here's the submit form function. Now this is React Hook form calling that, and it's called on the submit of the form element. Okay, then let's put some more classes on the form here. So I'll say class name equals flex column, get up to that breakpoint of small. Once again, I'll make it a flex row, give it a gap 4, and when we get up to that small size, we'll give it a gap of 8. Okay, after that, we'll close out the form there. And this is where I would build some columns inside the form that have different inputs, but just for now, let's go ahead and do something else. Let's just put in a paragraph here, and then we'll do a JSON.stringify, and inside of the JSON.stringify, we will pass in our form.getValues, so we get the values from the form. So whether we've received a customer or have a new form, we'll at least see what the form values are here on the page, and we could console log those as well, but let's see how it looks on the page first. Okay, with this much of our form in place, we don't have the inputs yet, but we'll at least be able to see the data here on the page. Let's go ahead and add the customer form now to our customer route, and then we'll be able to check it out. So we need to import the customer form into our page file at the customer/form. So looking at these directories, now here's the page file, and then we'll use it here in the form. So we'll import customer form. Oh, maybe I didn't need those curly braces there. Let's try this. Customer form. There we go. And I like to import it with the @ symbol here instead of just the ./. It is in the same directory though, if you wanted to do that, but we could also have app/ and it was rs, and then we had customers/form, and that's where we would be. So just consistently using this app, even though it's longer than the dot. You could do either one that you want to. Okay, after that, we have a new customer form component here. So this means we can call customer form without passing in customers, or the customer data, I should say. But here, we need to call the same form, but pass in the customer data. And my issue is I was so anxious to type the customer form component that I forgot I need to return it here from the server component. So in both instances, I want to return the customer form from this server component function. So that makes sense as we have the customer form page. Use the return keyword. Here we are editing customer data. Here we have a new customer. So both should work. Let's go to the terminal window and go ahead and start the application with npm run dev. Get this up and running, and then I'm going to hold down the control button and click localhost 3000. Should go ahead and launch in the browser. Of course, we'll have to log in, and to do that, we'll need to go to the /login page from the home page. So I'll just go ahead and enter that now. Once, of course, you start up Next.js, it takes it just a little bit to generate the page that you're going to. But there we are. I'm at the login. I'm going to click sign in. You may need to go ahead and enter in your email and receive a code back to sign in if you haven't signed in a while. I should be fine. And yep, I'm on the home page now. So I'm going to go to customers/form, then put in our search param. So customer ID equals 2. And here we have our edit customer form. So it did receive a customer, and now we've got the stringified form data. So you can see the form does have all the data that we expected it to as well. Now, what if we didn't have a search param? So maybe just a new customer, right? Yep, it says new customer form, and you can see the ID is now 0, and the values for all of the other form fields are empty strings. And now back in VS Code, we are ready to begin working on the ticket form page and the ticket form. So let's go ahead and create the ticket form now inside of tickets. We had the form directory. Here is the page. So alongside of it, let's create the ticket form.tsx component. And here we'll start out much the same way. So what I would like to do is go ahead and close that and get back to the customer form. There we go. Scroll to the top and we can just copy and paste some of these things. We didn't even use the button yet, but of course we will to submit the form. Let's go ahead and copy the use client and these imports because they're all the same. Come back here to the ticket form and paste them in. Now we have some types to import. So we're going to import insert ticket. There we go, ticket schema. Then we also want the type, insert ticket schema type. Whoops, I need the type keyword in front there. When I auto-completed it, went away. And then we also want select type. So type select ticket schema type. Okay, Alt-Z to wrap all of that down. So now we have both types and the insert ticket schema. Now let's go ahead and type up the props that we'll have here. Set this equal to an object, and now we'll have our customer once again. So this is the select customer schema type. Now we'll also have a ticket. Now notice the customer wasn't optional. So you have to start a ticket with a customer. That's the only way to start the ticket. And of course, if the ticket already exists, we're also going to bring in customer data. So either way, we're going to have a customer. But the ticket data itself is optional because we could be starting a new ticket and not have ticket data yet. So here we'll have select ticket schema type. And after that, we're going to have text eventually too, but we're not ready to bring in that tech data yet. So we'll just stop there for the props for now. And then let's start the function. So export default function ticket form. Then it's going to receive customer and ticket. And then after that, we could just say props here at the end. I could have probably put that all on one line, but sometimes I do it this way as well. And then after that, we've got the body of the function. Let's scroll for a little bit of room. And we'll begin by defining the default values for the form once again. So default values equals an object. This will have an ID. If you remember, this could have the ticket ID, but we also modified this in the schema where it can also possibly be new. Okay, after that, we're going to use customer ID. This could be ticket with optional chaining once again, customer ID, or it could be customer.id here also. Now we've got title, and this is going to be ticket, optional chaining, title, or possibly an empty string. After that, we'll have description, ticket, optional chaining, description, or an empty string. Completed, which is a Boolean. This will once again be optional chaining, or it's going to be false. And then we're going to have a tech, and it's either going to be the value of the tech field, or it's going to be that value that we set in the database now, which was new ticket at example.com. Because if we have a tech, this value will be their actual email address. So this is the way a new ticket will be identified that needs to be assigned to one of the techs. Okay, as we complete the default values, let's quickly discuss this. I'm using the null coalescing operator right here. And this is probably a better choice than the short circuit operator I used over in the customer form. Not a huge difference. The short circuit operator is going to accept the first truthy value, but what if you had a field like completed where false, of course, is a valid value as well, something like that. So I think the null coalescing operator is the better choice. I'm going to copy that, go back to the customer form, and you can easily see what you'd call the OR operator or the double pipes here, the short circuit. You could easily see this in a lot of code too, and both are valid if you know how to use them. I just like to be consistent and want to use the same in both forms. So I'm going to select all of those with Control D as I went through, and then I just pasted in the null coalescing operator instead. Just a quick discussion on the usage of that. Okay, let's scroll once again for some more room, and we need to define form again. So we'll have const form. equals use form, and we'll pass in our type, which is our insert ticket schema type. Then we'll have the operators and start our options object, and we'll have mode is once again on blur. Set the resolver, and that's going to be the Zod resolver, and we pass in the insert ticket schema. And finally, we pass in the default values, and we can just put a comma after that. Oh, it says something is not lining up correct. Let's see what the issue is here. I think I could put the type right here like we previously did on the customer form, and I think we'll be okay. So let's say insert. Again, I have to spell insert correctly. Then I want ticket schema type. And yep, there it got rid of our type problem there. So we just had to define the type of the default values that we expected, and all is good because we have our literal that this should be accepted. So it shouldn't be an issue with the ID field. I'm going to scroll up for some more room now, and much like the customer form, we need that on submit function. It's going to be basically the same. We'll have to change the type there. I'm going to select it, and really I'm going to select all of the JSX that we're returning, and we can just modify it because it's so very similar. So Control C to copy, come back into our ticket form now, paste this in, and let's first change the type of the submit here because it's not the customer schema type. So it's insert ticket schema type there. And now as we get into the form, let me press Control B so we can see a little more here as we work on this title, because it's going to change also. We're going to start out with the word ticket. No matter what, that will be the first word. Then we'll check the ticket ID. And remember, this is only going to be a number or not existing because that's what's passed in up here as ticket as a param. So it's before we assign new to the form value. So it's either going to be a number or it won't exist. So if it doesn't exist, we're going to choose, or actually if it does exist, I should say, we're going to choose the word edit. I'm going to get rid of the word edit actually and use a template literal here, and I'll put in the number sign, the pound sign, as you might know it, and then put in the ticket ID here if it exists. And if not, I'm going to put in the word form. And I'll get rid of this. So what we're saying is ticket number form. So before we even have that, I want to put in another check here. And I could do it on, well, let's not do it on a separate line. Let's just start here with our curly bracket. We'll say once again, if we have a ticket ID, we need optional chaining. And then we're going to say, if we do, we'll use the word edit. And if we don't, we'll use the word new. So what we're going to have is either one that says edit ticket number, whatever the number is, and otherwise we'll say new ticket form. So you might have another way to do that. That's just the way I quickly thought that through, but it works. So if we get a ticket, it'll notify us that we're editing and tell us the ID of the ticket. If we don't get any ticket data, it will say new ticket form. Now, aside from that, all the rest of this JSX where we brought in the form is just the same. And essentially, we're still doing the form.getValues. So that's going to get the values of the form that we populated up here in default values. Okay, with this form completed, at least as far as stringifying the values here on the page, we're ready to now import the ticket form into our ticket route so we can use that as well. Let's go back to the file tree, go to tickets, and then we're in form, and then page.tsx. This is where we need to import our ticket form. There we go. Once again, I like to use the @ symbol here just for consistency. So @/app/rs/tickets, and then it should be /form, and then we should have our ticket form. There we go. Okay, now that we've imported the ticket form component, let's scroll down here. This is where we return the ticket form with the customer information. This is for a new ticket. So we'll have ticket form, customer equals customer, and close this out. And just like before, I forgot to type return first, but it needs to return that component. Now down here, we'll have the edit ticket form. So it just receives a bit more information. Type return, and ticket form customer equals customer, but then we also have ticket data. So ticket slash close that out, Alt Z to wrap it down if you want to, and we'll still log the information here so we can see it in the console as well. Okay, so we've added that component. Let's now check it out in the browser. Is everything currently running here? Yep, it looks like it's running just fine in my browser. If you are in my server, dev server, if you haven't started your application or need to restart it, this would be the time to do it. And then we're going to go back to the browser and check out the tickets page. We were on the customers form. Let's go to tickets/form, and this one should, yes, it should give us the ticket ID or customer ID is required, because remember, we have to have one or the other. Even if we're going to start a new ticket, we need a customer ID. So let's do that. Let's go with question mark, customer ID equals 2. It's right there for me to press enter on, and it says new ticket form. And you can see the ID is the new string value that we expected. The tech has the new ticket value that we expected, and everything is in the form as we expect here, as we've stringified that data right now before we've created the form inputs. Now let's go ahead and use a ticket ID. So I'm going to say ticket ID equals 4, and we'll press enter, and we've got edit ticket number 4 and all of that information here in the form for ticket number 4. That's also working as expected. Okay, we've come a long way with both our ticket form and our client form here in VS Code. And in the next tutorial, we're going to continue working with React Hook Form and create inputs along with ShadCN UI and React Hook Form that work together, that are still type safe, that give us that validation, the instant feedback that we want, and we'll complete these forms. A quick shout out to my patrons. Holy Coder is a progress provider. Sean Lynch is a senior patron. And my junior patrons, Programming Polyglot, Isaac, Will, Ernie, Stacy, Abe, Javier, Michael. Thank you all so very much. You're helping me reach my goals. Remember to keep striving for progress over perfection. And a little progress every day will go a very long way. Please give this video a like if it's helped you. And thank you for watching and subscribing. You're helping my channel grow. Have a great day, and let's write more code together very soon.